call this meeting of the Capacity Committee. And we'll call this to order, and I'm going to go through the roll call. So if you're able, just please let us know you're here, and we'll go from there. So good morning. Sally Boland.
Here.
Representative Rodney Creech.
Here.
Alex.
Here.
Representative Stephanie House. Okay, we'll go back to her. Joe Russell. Jean Thompson.
Present.
Pete Van Runkle.
Here.
Senator Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. I'll go back to Representative House. And also I'll go back to Joe Russell. Okay. Is there anyone that I may have missed that's on with us today that I'm not seeing? Okay, great.
Well, we got Amelia and Tessie there.
Is Tessie's here? And I wasn't.
She's not on camera, but she's.
Okay. Amelia was with us today as well.
Yep, I'm here. Good morning.
Hey, great. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So the first order of business would be to approve the minutes. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at those. Thanks to Joe for taking those good notes. I personally just saw one question on there, or correction. It said that that Pollock was going to be the facilitator for this meeting. It said that Boland will be taking the minutes while Pollock will be facilitating. I think I'm facilitating today, but I don't know if I'm reading that incorrectly or. That's all I had.
You're clearly facilitating.
Gotcha. Well, great. So can I consider that approval for the previous minutes?
So moved.
All right. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Jean. And thanks to Sally for taking the notes today. So I guess we left off. I don't know if there's any other agenda changes or anything anyone would like to add in today. I should probably ask that first. If not,
Leanne,
yes.
Sally Boland. I don't think we're going to have time today, but I just don't want to lose sight of when we had our task force meeting, the big task force meeting. There were some additional questions that the director had encouraged committees to address. So maybe, I just don't want to lose sight of that. And I don't think we'll probably have time today, but perhaps our next meeting, we can kind of go through those. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think we had touched on that a little bit at our last subcommittee meeting. And so, yeah, I think that's a good idea to not lose sight of that, so we can maybe get those covered. When our next large task force meeting, is that still a couple of weeks away? I think. So,
it's like May 24th, maybe, or something.
So we have a little bit of time. I'm sorry, Jean.
No problem. I'm not certain of that, Leanne, anyhow.
Okay.
Just my memory.
Okay.
Alex can tell us.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I think we'll keep that in mind, Sally. Thank you for mentioning that, and we can go back and talk about that if we have time today. But we left off last week discussing number 19 in our Senate bill topics, and I think that we, looking at the notes, that there were some additional things, some additional discussion that we felt we wanted to continue with on that. And that was increasing the number of healthcare professionals necessary to treat the growing, aging, and Alzheimer's disease and dementia populations. So Does anybody want to jump in there and continue that discussion?
Well, I would like to say that, I don't think we should view healthcare professionals as a big title. And I'm afraid sometimes that people assume that to mean like the nurses and the doctors, or even quite frankly, STNAs. In assisted living, we utilize an entire group of resident care aides. And what we really need to increase, since we're primarily more an ADL service and a kind of custodial service, we need to really increase that population of those entry level people. So I want to make sure they're not lost in the term of healthcare professionals. We'd like them to enter, and maybe some of them through a career path will become what might actually be considered a healthcare professional. But really, that's when we talk to our members, while certainly there's a shortage of nurses, etc., there's a huge shortage of just frontline staff. So, I want to make sure we're including that concept in the healthcare professionals. We just need to increase workforce in healthcare.
Well, I think that's one thing. I agree with Gene, but I think that's one thing about this question is what is meant by healthcare professionals. Is the intent of the question to get at, licensed professionals, or is the intent of the question broader? And perhaps we could recommend as a subcommittee or a committee that it be interpreted more broadly, as Gene was suggesting. I would amend her comments just slightly and say that from our members' perspective, nurses are at least those members who use nurses. Nurses are just as much of a problem as what you might call aides or people direct care staff who are not licensed.
Well, I don't disagree, Pete. I definitely think that nurses are captured in healthcare professionals. I was just more concerned about that unlicensed group of people not being captured.
Yeah,
and they're so essential.
They should be.
I agree on all fronts. It definitely is I don't know if we want to call it a crisis, but I think all of us that are in facilities see it every day. And as you said, Gene, it's every position. It's not just, those that are licensed. So those are really good points. Again, something else to bring up maybe to the consulting group when that time comes to, dig that down a little bit deeper.
It is a crisis, Leanne. I think that's the correct word. But today it is, and I think it goes beyond even this question. I mean, to some degree, it really affects almost every other question. The workforce issue affects almost every other question, because when we're talking about access to services, you can't have access to services, whatever service they are. It doesn't matter what the setting is. It doesn't matter what the specific service is. You got to have people to deliver the service, and we don't right now. So that has just wide-ranging impacts across the entire spectrum of this discussion.
I agree, Pete. And actually, Leanne, I think if you talk to providers, they would say the workforce shortage is the number one crisis in our industries, in our professions.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Senator Wilson. We're in the height of budget season, and I'm handling calls every 15 minutes, every half hour, from people that need something in the budget. And it doesn't matter what industry it is. It doesn't matter what part of the healthcare delivery system it is. Everybody says the same thing. We can't get workers. Now, the problem we face in this industry is that you can't just say, well, okay, we'll cut back. We'll do this, we'll do that. you have patients that you have to take care of, particularly in nursing and assisted living, 24/7. And if you can't say, well, we'll just get by, we'll just do less. You can't do less. So I agree with Pete and others that this is a major crisis in your industry, a major crisis.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
go ahead.
No, sorry, Lynn. Yeah, I would agree too. And I think it cuts across into home care and adult. I mean, it's across the whole, like last week, how we were talking about the whole spectrum of care services from community-based to long-term care. I think it cuts across all sectors. So I would agree too. So.
Mhm. Yeah, those are some great points. And I don't know, is this a good time to kind of inject in here, Sally, the report that Amelia sent regarding the high school direct support professional program? I don't know if this is a good time to kind of touch on that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And I think what we had talked about last week too was, because I think we had a lot of discussion about workforce, and I felt bad cutting it off because we were past 9 o'clock last week, and I think people still had things to say, and we didn't want to miss anything else from anyone else. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, or folks from ODA too. I think that'd be awesome if you could share.
Well, I'll interject here. I sent the report to Sally. It's from the the Ohio Alliance of Direct Support Professionals, and this is a group in the the DD network, run by Bethany Toledo, and they've really been working to try to engage high school students, before they graduate, and kind of give them skills then, so when they graduate, they'll be able to join the workforce. Kind of similar, it reminded me of, kind of like my high school had kind of a trade school program where you could go and you could, learn how to do more of a trade, earn credits, graduate, and then directly enter the workforce. And so while this is in the, kind of the DD network, I'm thinking maybe something like this might be viable in the aging network for, home health aides or something like that. I encourage you to read the report. It is very short. It's only 7 pages. I did not send a big report for everyone to read. But it's just an interesting model that kind of then also addresses, student dropout rates, or maybe students who don't feel that, a 4-year college or, something is for them. It's kind of a win-win for both students and then, our workforce issue. And I do want to mention Bethany Toledo came and spoke to the DD Council, which is what I'm on, which is how I know about this program like a year or two ago. And we actually had a direct support professional who was with a council member at the time. And this group of the Alliance of Direct Support Professionals, they also provide things like extra training. They have a conference for them. It really makes them feel more so like, it's a real career and a career path, and that they are valued. And this direct support professional was talking about how they really felt that through this organization that, provided the training and a conference and support. So I think it's really important to support those professionals as well. So just something to think about.
This is Pete. Thank you for that, Amelia. As you probably know, we represent DD providers, and I'm not that deeply involved in it. I haven't actually read the report, but I know Debbie Jenkins, who is our person who is our lead on DD issues, has, and there are some issues with the report that the provider associations, and it's not just us, but also OPRA, have some concerns about. Not that there's not good stuff in there too, but there's some things about, and I would be getting into deep water if I tried to speak about them in detail, because I don't know the detail. But I just want to put that caveat out there that there's some issues with this.
Okay, it may not be perfect, but it is an example, I guess, of another way to engage people to think about being a part of the workforce.
Amelia, this is Jean. One thing I really like about it is so often I see information about the workforce shortage that's really concentrating like at the college level. Well, those aren't people who are going to enter at the entry level in any of the long-term care spectrums. So I think one thing that's really important is that we need to engage people who aren't planning, at least at the moment, to go to college, etc., because we have lots of jobs in our different spectrums that we represent, that's not necessary. So I really like the focus of younger people and of allowing them, to me, I'd like to, and I have to admit, I have not read the report either as yet. I will, but I think that it's very important that we engage younger people, like at the high school level, even sometimes maybe junior high level, to try to encourage them to at least, and to be giving them something like credits towards those programs in high school, etc. And moving, I know that there have been some interesting things done with the culinary art school. I'm not sure, that's probably not the right title of it, but that they, some of our members have hired people. It's a technical school, who are getting degrees in the food industry, or not maybe degrees, but some technical standing to come to their facilities in that area. So I'm all for those younger entry level things being really, really worked on and pushed.
Yeah, I would agree with Eugene and with Amelia, with Pete, everyone that's identifying this crisis, for sure. I love that idea too. I think I did read the report last evening that Amelia sent, and I think the concept is right on. And that's, you can have this crisis, and we all know this crisis is here, but what do we do about it? And where do you start? And I think that is an important area to start. Just start when those kids are a little bit younger and they're just not sure what they want to do, or they're not cut out for college, or they don't think they want to go to college yet. And then just giving them credit. And then again, I think I've mentioned at our last meeting, having, pay that is kind of commensurate with that as they kind of progress through maybe different positions in these different healthcare areas. That's just my thought, but it's engaging those younger kids then, or students as well, getting them into these facilities, getting them exposed, and hoping that that's a calling for them, because that's truly what you need, I think, to be in the healthcare realm. So does anyone else have any further comments or discussion on number? Is there anything else?
Leanne, it's Alex. I just have a couple brief comments to make. One is, Amelia brought up earlier, sort of like the career tech education aspect. One thing I can say is that is one of the identified ways under the Strategic Action Plan on Aging to kind of address workforce within the HCBS space. And so I think that there are opportunities for there to be linkages between our approach here and how it links to, the approved Strategic Action Plan on Aging. One other comment that I would make, and this might be a one-off, but I think it's something to keep in the back of our minds, and that is the question at hand discusses increasing the workforce. But I think another issue that is somewhat tied to this is not just increasing the number of our workforce, but also maintaining them within the workforce, realizing that turnover is also something that is certainly an issue within the aging and long-term care continuum. So I think, perhaps when we discuss this issue in terms of bringing more into the workforce, we should also discuss opportunities of retaining them within our workforce. Obviously, we know, the issues of rates always comes up. I think that is a tool within the toolbox, but there might be other training opportunities or other opportunities by which we can encourage that those who are entering the aging and long-term care workforce can stay within the aging and long-term care workforce. Those are my only comments. Appreciate it.
Alex, this is Steve Wilson. I think you hit a very interesting point here, and that is the retention piece. And the elephant in the room with this whole worker shortage thing, and particularly in this industry, is the fact that the government is paying people more to stay at home than go to work. And the fact is that the government is pushing us toward a minimum wage of $15 an hour. So if you need workers and the going rate is to retain them is $15 an hour, or whatever it turns out to be, always increasing it seems, then you have to think in terms of where your funds are coming from. And where Medicaid is now, it is not reimbursing any level of care, nursing, assisted living, home health, go all the way down the spectrum. It is not reimbursing at a level that allows you to do that. And so we need to be engaged also in the government affairs area to make people aware that you can't pay people to stay home and expect to have workers. You cannot raise the minimum wage without giving the healthcare industry the means to pay that wage. So that whole area is very important to this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, I think, on all points. I don't know if anyone else has any comments on that.
Well, actually, I agree completely with Senator Wilson. I mean, we've asked repeatedly over the last few budgets for an increase, actually an add-on for dementia, because dementia is such a specialized area, care within the waiver, and we've never gotten it. So there is clearly a lot of work to still be done in terms of government relations, or the government aspect of it. I mean, as we talked in earlier questions on this Senate Bill 24 topics, assisted living can't kind of step up to some of this need unless, in fact, the government under Medicaid, in terms of the waiver, is going to step up.
Right.
Which is a topic for the budget bill as we speak.
Right.
Right.
And this is Sally, I would agree too. And I think that Joe Russell, because I don't think he's here, has made that point about home care. And I think it's, again, across the spectrum. I know Adult Day hasn't had an increase since I think 2012 or 2011 or something like that. So it's an issue, I think, that cuts across all the services being provided right now.
Yeah. Again, I also agree with all of you on all points. So I think we could probably stay on this topic all morning. I hate to move on, but I also feel like maybe we should, start looking at the next one, which I believe is 21 was our next topic that we were going to discuss. I'll just throw it out there one more time if anyone has any other comments on topic 19 right now. Okay.
Oh, actually, my one other comment would just be, as the conversation with the budget concerning rates, among other provisions, I think this could be an opportunity for us to almost have like an after action with this committee to discuss what ends up in the signed version of the budget, and then an opportunity to assess as a group this exact question, because things may change between now and July 1. There's going to be opportunities to discuss through the rules process or through other means, whatever has been achieved within the signed version of the budget. So that is one thing that I would recommend. And maybe we can just kind of keep that as a one-off opportunity, since we still have the full month of July in order to prepare and draft the report, hopefully for the to fulfill the August deadline. That would be that's my only comment there, realizing the fluidity of the conversation. And also, it's an important conversation.
Absolutely.
And some of us hope to influence what happens in the signed version, right?
Absolutely. I agree with you, Pete.
So Alex, is there some other procedural item or something else we need to do when you talk about an after action plan or question? I guess I just need a little clarity in my mind on how do we.
I mean, this could be a continuation of our work here. This would only be the opportunity for us to again engage this unique or specific question, or I would extend that further. I mean, realizing that by that point in time, we will have limited time before the report is due, but maybe, as we continue these conversations up until July, this question obviously being one of them, but if there are others here as well that are potentially addressed or not addressed within the budget, but we understand the importance of fulfilling that question, that could be the opportunity to, whether it's, just to discuss, these items in greater detail. Once we know what's in the budget, once all of that is available. Does that help?
I know.
Sorry, I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm stumbling here.
This is Steve. I know that you want to move on, but I just feel compelled to make one more point. You all live in this world. And so you see this world and you understand this world, and you know that if you're losing money on every Medicaid patient you have, what that means in the long term, etc. But understand that this report is so important. It's so important to lay out the crisis in the future, because they don't see this as a crisis. What do legislators see today? They see new facilities being built on every corner. They see the fact that we are at 69% in nursing care of capacity. And they say, what's the crisis? What's your problem? So this report is so very important. And I think that our consultant, when we get them on board, can help us look beyond today and beyond this crisis and paint a picture of a looming crisis, which is what we heard when we passed this bill, that there's a looming crisis on the amount of people that are going to need care, and we have to be prepared for it, and we have to be prepared for it monetarily as well as facility-wise. And so this report is so important. And Alex, what I hope I'm doing is that I am speaking to what you're saying. We have to have this report be a selling tool, and that time period in July is going to be very important to get the facts and figures in there that will prove our point. So sorry to ramble on, but this is what this report is all about. It's about capacity, and it's about how do you meet that capacity, and that capacity has to be met with dollars. It has to be met with facilities. And right now, legislators do not understand that.
Thank you.
We appreciate
I think that's an important point too, Senator Wilson. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for those thoughts, and I totally agree. We have our work cut out for us, that's for sure. So, but that's hopefully this will get this that important message to those that need to hear it and can hopefully do something about it. So thank you, Senator Wilson, for those comments. Okay, well, I think we will try to move on here this morning, and we'll look at topic number 21, which is improving long-term care, including assisted living for those with Alzheimer's disease or related dementias. I don't know if anyone has looked at the other comments that are on this particular topic. Again, that's another, improving long-term, that's a big one. So again, I'll open it up for comments.
I think some of the comments that are already there just show how this really ties back to workforce, just like so many of the other ones do in reality. Because again, you have to have the people to provide the care, and from what I hear from our members, just being very blunt and honest about it, is that they're scraping to provide basic services, and far from improved or enhanced. It's like we've just got to keep people fed and clean and safe, because that's all we have the staff to do. We can't find anybody else. It really is a crisis, and it really ties all back to workforce.
I go back a little bit to earlier comments, and I think Leanne, you and I both commented on this. I believe in a mentoring concept for staff coming into assisted living or long-term care. That kind of training is absolutely critical. The on-site with resident kind of training, and I also think it takes care of an issue that, quite frankly, given this workforce shortage crisis, one thing that, and I think maybe Senator Wilson touched on it a little bit, we have people who come in and leave in a day or 2 days of having been hired. I'm assuming all the other providers on the call certainly experience that or through their members. So really, training that happens there is better, because it's not like you've invested all this in someone who only stays for a day. Also, quite frankly, I think it gives the new recruited person an opportunity to actually experience what they would be doing in concert with a mentor. I think that's kind of critical. You can describe care situations in dementia care, but you almost have to live them. Because even I know myself 1,000 years ago, when I was an administrator, I tried to be brutally honest about what that care could entail. I mean, not just, but somehow other people really didn't get it. I think being there and experiencing those things is really critical. And then, to your earlier comment, Leanne, where you said we have to get the people with the right kind of spirit or heart or potential calling. I think you did. You used the word a calling. Well, I think the reality is we may not be able to find enough people, given the enormous need coming, who truly have that calling. So I think we're going to have to work with some people who don't maybe truly have the calling, but certainly, and that maybe will speak to some of the other parts of what we do in terms of salary, wages, and benefits, etc., or the career path. Maybe that can be an enticement, and that if there truly are career paths. But I'm all for the concept of mentoring to help people to adjust to those kinds of environments. I mean, I've heard in lots of calls on different topics where it's really best to have a consistent workforce for people with cognitive impairments. Well, to be honest, given everything I think it's a wonderful idea too. But to be truthful, given everything we've heard, that's often impossible to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jean. And I know that has been a focus over the years of facilities to try to keep those consistent workers. And it is really important in a Alzheimer's and dementia unit. Just again from personal experience, you see how that affects the residents that are in those units, and that is important. But you're right; those days are probably we're looking at a whole different workforce now and a whole different need in our workforce. I think people want to start at a higher level of pay right out of the chute. They, so there's just so many different facets of that to take into consideration. But the mentoring program and the teaching them or exposing them maybe is a better word to just what they're going to be doing every day. You would hope that might prevent some of those people from only staying a day or two, but yeah, we're all seeing it. We all see you think you've got a shift covered and they either just don't show up or they call off because they're just not vested in the job. And I don't really have a good answer for how to change that, but I really like your idea as well. And I did mention that, I think, in some of my comments of mentoring them, bringing them in and having someone support them in their daily job duties and teaching them.
In the interest of discussion with this point, improving long-term care. I mean, obviously included in this question is assisted living. My guess that would also include nursing homes. But for our collective benefit, are we defining long-term care as like home and community-based services as well as assisted living and nursing homes? How broad do we really want to include, or how broad do we want the definition of long-term care with regards to this question?
So the term long-term care is somewhat ill-defined. Typically, when people these days at least want to refer to something outside of facility-based services, it's usually long-term services and supports. I think we should look at this broadly and use the term long-term care to mean any kind of formal care, whether it's delivered, regardless of the setting in which it's delivered. I think that would be more in keeping with the intent here, because we really want to have high quality services provided no matter where they're provided.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and realistically, yes, we're going to need every kind of aspect and level within that broad spectrum Pete's referring to meet the need.
Mm-hmm.
So in answer to your question, yes.
This is Sally. Yeah, I would agree with that definition too. I had wondered about that. I think the discussion that we just had about the workforce is, real imperative to this. I also wondered, because I think the word improving, I was struggling with this, and it seemed like there could potentially be some overlap with our previous discussion around quality care. Because it would seem if we're improving, we're trying to continually work towards better quality of care. And so I wonder if some of that discussion we had previously could inform this this subject area too. So
I think there's also a little overlap on this question with one of the previous points where we talked about that there are all levels within dementia care that, I know I commented in some of the stuff on that, assisted living, just given our average age of 85, there's some memory impairment in almost everyone. I mean, absolutely, would never say all, but lots. So there's a gradation of dementia care, along lines. And so we're not just talking about that person, in my opinion, in this whole conversation. It's about how our society can adjust to this aging population with gradations of Alzheimer's and dementia and other dementias. I mean, we certainly have people in assisted living who have memory impairment, but are not at levels that necessarily require really focused specific items. But then we certainly have people who have it at much higher levels. So how societally can we meet that gradation of need in the long-term services and support network?
So is that a concern at all the facility levels, as you're assessing someone when they come in, or you're following them through their care need changes? Is that
Well, actually, for instance, my mom speaking, I guess we do a lot of mother talk here, but my own mother went through, over a period of 12 years, we went through many gradations. I mean, where needs could be met just in a, almost more in just a general assisted living with some, and then with some extra services put on. Ultimately, my mother had to transition to a memory care unit. But even in that particular building of memory care unit, they had gradations within the memory care unit. I mean, there were actually 3 separate levels within that. So what I'm just saying is that if we think about this a little more globally and societally, we're thinking about attempting to improve care of people, not who just would require the secure memory care unit, whether that was in a skilled care facility or an assisted living facility, but all those people who may be receiving services at home. Maybe, see, to me, the biggest item in the services is at home is that, generally speaking, if it's a dementia or related or Alzheimer's, usually it works best services at home if there's some level of support at home. When that's very difficult is when that support level at home changes, maybe the death of a spouse or something like that, so that there isn't that that oversight. But I think it can improve all along the spectrum. I think part of that even is making society more aware of dementia, making more aware of where I live, they have the postmen have a thing called kind call. So in other words, if they go to somebody's house and nothing looks right to them, then the city calls them. I mean, we're going to need to spread out ultimately and focus way beyond traditional supports.
Jean, I really appreciate your comments just now. I think what you're really hitting on is the need for there to be that person-centered approach, realizing that dementia or cognitive health, cognitive decline impacts everyone differently, that we can't just lump people into buckets based on quote unquote what stage they may be in a diagnosis, but rather where they are individually as they live with dementia. So points are well taken there for sure. To your point about the societal issue, the ideological issue, great point there as well. I'll mention the SAPA again. So the SAPA talks about cognitive health, but also within each of those priorities, we need to address 2 key functions, and that's equity and elder justice. And elder justice is loosely defined, very broad, and that includes how can we ideologically change the way that we look at aging Ohioans, but also, what they may be facing, whether that is dementia or perhaps, certain chronic illnesses where you're almost predisposed to a dementia diagnosis due to that chronic condition. And so the opportunity to really look at not just the policies and the way by which we care for our older adults or anyone with dementia, but also the ideological approach. How can we redefine how we address and look at those who are not just aging, but those who are experiencing, dementia, living with dementia, experiencing cognitive decline, things along those lines. So thank you for those points.
Yeah, those are, Jean, some great points. Alex, yours as well. And I think what kind of comes to my mind is educating the public, kind of in a broad term. But that's, I loved Jean's example of the postmen or ladies that are out there, checking on people. That could be the meal delivery, homebound meal delivery people that are doing those kind of things. And again, just the outreach is a lot bigger to improve the care of all of these residents and patients at all levels. So thank you for all of those points. Anybody have anything else they want to add in on this?
Yes, this is Senator Wilson. The basic question was, should we export quality standards to all the levels of care, to home health care, etc.? And I think the answer to that is yes, and I'm going to take a different angle here. It is the same drum that I've been beating, but when we're talking about retaining workers, if we have a worker that is dealing with elderly and their job is only to be sure their bedpan is emptied and they take their medicine and then they move on to the next one, and we don't have that quality care component in there, then what's going to happen is that they're going to view their job in a certain way, that's their job and that's what they do. It's giving those people the time and having the quality care component where they not only do that, but they have time to hold that person's hand. They have time to have that mission component. They have time to sit and talk to that person and feel they're making a difference. So if we have that quality care at all levels, I think it feeds right into retention on the issue of having enough healthcare workers. So just a little different angle on why you should export quality from nursing to assisted living to home health. Every area needs to have that quality component.
I totally agree. That is also another great angle to look at and obviously keep in the conversation for sure.
Just one other angle, going back to some of the things that Jane and Alex were saying. We have to look at the ability of consumers, families and people, who have dementia, if they're early enough on, to get help with sorting out all of the different types of services, because as we said, it's person-centered. Everybody's situation, each person's situation is different. What natural supports they have or don't have, what their living arrangements are, etc. All of those things come into play, and they need that assistance, and we know the AAAs do a lot of that, but does everybody know about that? Where do you go? I mean, the Alzheimer's Association may do that as well. So I think that's part of it is getting more visibility to people to know where to go to get help in deciding what is the best level of care, where can they go to get that sort of thing.
Pete, I would only add one point to that, and that would be, in addition to the area agencies on aging, the state long-term care ombudsman with their consumer guide can certainly be of benefit as well, to be that online database of opportunities as people are considering their long-term care needs. In addition to the state long-term care ombudsman, we have within the Division for Community Living, we work with we work with individuals as well as their families to help them identify, what long-term care needs may also be best, through those programs as well. And so, we have some of those supports in place, but obviously I think, there are always opportunities to look at what's currently existing, but also, what could we look at in the future as well.
This is Senator Wilson. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm pulling into Columbus, and so I'm probably going to continue to lose you. I just want to conclude by taking a moment to thank each of you. Each one of you is giving greatly to this effort to produce this report, to have a policy on Alzheimer's in the state of Ohio, and I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing. I'm going to have to sign off because I'll be pulling into the State House parking garage, and I know I'm going to lose you then. So you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything.
Thank you so much, Senator Wilson. Really appreciate it and appreciate your time being with us today. Well, hey, is there, I guess just one other comment, just listening to Alex's comments and a couple of the others, those programs are out there. And I think a lot of us know those programs are out there. How do you dive down and get that to the people that truly need it kind of in the heat of the moment, if you will, when you're, especially in some of the smaller communities and maybe, I know the Alzheimer's Association is wonderful, and the Ohio Department, the Area Agency on Aging and all of that stuff. But sometimes I don't know if that's a component of this, of getting the proper resources to the people that need them when they need them. I don't know if there's really kind of like a clearinghouse for that. I know you have to kind of get with each different organization. And again, you're at different levels all the time and things change all the time. So, because sometimes that's what I hear from people that are struggling through this, especially those with the early onset. They want to keep them home as long as they can, but they don't really know what resources are out there to help them at home and help them, improve the care of their loved one that they may be doing. So does that, is there, a need for that?
For a long time, Leanne, and I feel remiss that I'm not sure exactly where this went, but there was major discussion of a front door, and a front door, basically it was going to be just what you referred to, that was the place you could call to just get help, information on all these other, as you pointed out. Does anybody have more? Maybe Alex has more update on that. I mean, what ultimately happened to that? It was discussed as the front door, the number to call, the place to start your journey. What has happened to that?
Thanks, Gene. Actually, I think you and I I think our minds are kind of linked today, because this was actually something I wanted to bring up. The front door is housed within the Department of Aging. Right now, it's predominantly within our Division for Community Living, which oversees all of our Medicaid programs. But Amelia, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the Elder Connections Division also has a little bit of work in this space as well, although predominantly housed within DCL. And so we're definitely helping to manage the front door. And quite honestly, we're looking at opportunities to expand it, realizing that, as we look at implementing the Strategic Action Plan on Aging, if we are going to be effective in earlier opportunities to help individuals before they may need long-term care, we want to do our part to expand existing resources that we know are proven to be that initial opportunity for someone entering into our network, to make sure that they have what they need when they need it, versus waiting for them to have to perhaps consider a more permanent need in long-term care. Amelia, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just agree with what you said. It is very It's very Medicaid based and focused, and so that's something that we've identified as something we'd like to, you know, to change. And so that is something we're working on and trying to identify how we can do that. I'm not a front door expert by any means, but I do know that that's kind of, it's very Medicaid focused, and we're working to kind of incorporate these other things. And I think this would be a great opportunity to kind of, you know, insert this kind of work into the front door and ensure that, you know, if someone wants to call and needs that information, they receive it. So this is great. This is great feedback. We can take this back to the department.
Yeah, and also I'm wondering, I know we're kind of running low on time here, but I'd be lying to all of you if I told you I was an expert on front door. But there are certainly others within our department who live and breathe this work every day. And so perhaps, you know, if it would please the committee, maybe we could dedicate some time at the next meeting to invite those experts to come in and talk about these opportunities in greater detail. If, of course, I mean, I open that up for discussion, if that's something that is of interest to everybody.
That's fine. I think my perception of front door has been it's really a lot around level of care, which is a very Medicaid concept. And, and of course, the AAAs are responsible for determining levels of care for people. I think what I was thinking, and I suspect Leanne was as well, was something that would be much broader than that. And it could even be like, you know, ways that family members could learn how to deal with, you know, how to provide care in their home, how to respond to their loved ones, and in a way that's going to be effective. To Jean's point about, you know, what are the natural supports? Well, what support do the natural supports need to be able to be as effective as possible? So it's a lot broader than, okay, do you meet the level of care, and then from there, what services do you now qualify for by virtue of level of care? Not that that's unimportant; it's very important, but I was thinking of something significantly broader than that.
I guess for me, well, I was very interested in.
Go ahead, Jean.
Well, I was just very interested in Amelia's comments and Alex's. I'm just looking for to me, in that front door, and I agree, it became way too Medicaid oriented, just talking about that. But what we need is the kind of thing where you walk in the library and up on their information, if you need help with any kind of, you know, I don't know the politically correct way to say that, but cognitive issues for yourself or a loved one, call 1-800. See, that's how I always envisioned the front door, Leanne, and it might have been Pollyanna-ish or something, but just that one number where you called to just get started, whether you were the family. I mean, you could phrase it in a way. I mean, I agree, because I don't think we're talking about everybody needing to go to a facility. I don't think we're talking about everybody even necessarily needing home health. So much depends on their individual situation. But if right now the front door is limited in a big way just to sort of the Medicaid side of things, then it can't serve that purpose. But maybe it's a starting point if it could be expanded in this much bigger way, that it's just a, you know, I love the kind of stuff where it says call 1-800 blah, blah, blah. And it's just where you get to actually talk to a person.
Mm-hmm.
Tessie, thanks for that. I'm wondering, since the conversation with experience and capacity right now is pretty much the same, is it all right if I provide the email addresses of the capacity committee and we can forward them the invitation? If you can make it, of course. I know all of us are very busy time right now, but if your schedule's allowed, you could listen in on those conversations. Thanks, Tessie.
Yeah,
I love the French pronunciation there, Tessie. Boy, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With our Bob sitting in there.
That sounds great. Thank you for that, Tessie and Alex. And so back to Alex's, I think you had asked about maybe bringing in some other professionals to talk to us a little more about that. Does the group want that to happen for the next meeting? I'm good with that. If there's, if we want to take some time to do that, or do we still have number 22 and 28 on our topics to cover, which we'll probably obviously have to pick those up. It is a little after 9, so I'll have to pick those up at our next capacity meeting. So I don't know, is this the time to, maybe bring some other speakers in to talk to us about some of these things, or how does the group feel?
My suggestion is that we knock out the rest of our assignments, and then if I don't know what the future holds for this committee after we do that. If we then we can then circle back to some of the stuff that we've already covered and go more in depth, or I don't know what we're doing. I suppose that has something to do with when the consultant comes on too. So Tessie's nodding. So, but I would suggest let's give the rest of our first. Let's get the rest of our assignment done.
I agree with Pete on that.
Okay, so it sounds like then for the next meeting, we'll just continue on. We'll start with number 22 and 28, and then discuss our next moves from there. And like you say, I would just offer, if there are other professionals or speakers that anyone could recommend, as we circle back, as Pete said, once we finish all, discussing our topics, if there's anything else we want to delve into a little deeper and get some other input, I would just, maybe we can email each other or email Alex and take it from there. Does that sound like a good way to move forward with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So, gosh, well, thank you everybody for such great input and great discussion. I feel like sometimes we could do this for several hours, and just so much good conversation happens, and so much good input on so many important topics that we're dealing with here. So thank you for everybody's input. Thanks, Amelia, for that report from the high school direct support program. That's interesting as well. So with that, our next meeting date, do we want to hold with next Tuesday at 8 o'clock? Does that day seem to work for everybody?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I can do it, but I have to probably leave at about 8:30 next Tuesday.
Okay.
I wouldn't be adverse, but
put Gene on first.
Well, it's not that, Pete. I was going to suggest maybe we could do 7:30, but you and I know that we've gotten lots earlier to meetings than that. But but this group may not feel that 7:30 works.
Well, I've got my daily 7 a.m. So we could cut that short and do 7:30. I have no problem with that.
Well, I don't want people to make an exception for me, so I would just have to cut my participation short.
We could meet in the middle and do it at 7:45.
Oh, that's a great idea. Leanne, you are well, that's great in a meeting leader.
So does that work for everybody? I'm fine with that. I can do 7:30. I can do 7:45. Whatever for the group is good.
Or you can leave it at 8, Leanne. I'm not asking for an exception to be made for me.
Okay.
Can we keep it at 8 a.m.? This is Stephanie.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Just for consistency's sake.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. So we'll keep it for next Tuesday. That will be the 18th. I'm looking at my calendar correctly at 8 a.m. Representative House, would you like to facilitate next week?
It's my turn. So, yep, I'll do that.
Okay. And would anyone like to volunteer to take the minutes? I will. I'll jump in there. I'll do minutes next meeting.
Thank you, Leanne.
It's my turn, I think.
Thank you, Leanne. That is awfully nice.
And Stephanie.
No problem. So I think is there anything else for the good of the group? Anything else anyone would like to talk about this morning? If not, I don't know, Alex, do we need a formal motion to adjourn for these, or do we just?
I believe all we need is a motion. I don't believe we technically need a second. Oh, there goes Pete. All right.
I'm ready to roll on to the next thing.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks, Pete. Thanks, everybody. I think with that, we're all set. Everybody have a good rest of your day.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, Sally.